Hey, what's up guys? So, today we're going to be talking about The Amazing Spider-Man number 32. I will outright be talking about the comic book itself, and be giving my thoughts and opinions about it. So spoiler warning, just as a heads up. Otherwise, if you don't mind following the story through my video, then you're also welcome to do so. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like and subscribe, and without further ado, let's begin. So in the previous issue, we established that Kraven and the Goblin Queen are working together. This issue begins with a ceremony between Kraven and the Goblin Queen. The ceremony itself is to remove any of the Goblin sins from the Goblin Queen. And I'm assuming this is a ritual that only Kraven knows. That's probably why they're working together on this. Once they complete the ritual, the Goblin Queen asks, "Did it work?" And Kraven says, "It did," signifying that they were able to remove the Goblin sins away from the Goblin Queen and over onto Kraven's spear. Kraven says, "The Goblin sins imbue my spear. You're free, Kafka." She says, "I don't feel free, but maybe I will once they find their way home." Effectively, their plan is to impale Norman Osborn with the spear, imbuing him with the Goblin sins, bringing them back to their original owner type of deal. Next we get Peter Parker, and he's on his way to a date with Michelle, the lawyer from the previous issue. But he takes a few phone calls along the way. The first one is with Norman Osborn. He's basically just checking up on him, making sure he's alright. Norman tells him that he's just at the lab working on some things, and Peter tells him that he might stop by later if his date goes wrong. Then he takes another phone call that's kind of toxic from Felicia Hardy, basically saying like, "Hey, we haven't talked in a few weeks, and I just wanted to see how the drawn-in, depressed thing is going for you." But Peter's not dealing with it. He's on his way to go see a hot date, Michelle the lawyer. Upon finding this out, Felicia does get jealous, of course, because she's hot. At the date itself, it doesn't actually quite go so well. Right off the bat, Peter being late is kind of a red flag for her, but she deals with it. And then once Peter finds out that lawyers can actually represent like bad people, Peter freaks out and he instantly gets a bad taste in his mouth about her. This is where they establish that Michelle is actually a lawyer for Tombstone. And then we cut over to Kraven and the Goblin Queen, where they explain their plot a little bit more. And it seems like now that they have Kraven's spear imbued with the Goblin curse, they seem to want to reproduce the Kraven's Last Hunt popular story. And as a brief summary about that story itself, it basically involved Kraven wanting to take out Spider-Man and taking the Spider-Mantle itself, so he ended up pretending to be Spider-Man, and what he wanted to do was be a better version of Spider-Man. So he ended up hunting down one of his villains, and Kraven was kind of a very unwell character in the head. So inevitably, once he ended up doing his greatest hunt in that story, he did off himself. For that reason, I think it's one of the more popular stories. And in this particular issue, they're sort of trying to recreate the actual hunt itself. So what their plan is, they're going to impale Norman Osborn with the spear, causing him to turn into the Green Goblin, and they're going to recreate that hunt itself, where Kraven's going to pretend to be Spider-Man and go after the Green Goblin. The Goblin Queen herself seems to be just encouragement. I don't know, they're both crazy characters. So far, after explaining the plot itself, it may sound a little bit ridiculous, but I'm honestly quite enjoying the story. Comics are ridiculous after all. As long as they're written well, you know, who cares? Later, because Peter's date ended up going not so well, he ended up going to the lab to meet up with Norman Osborn and work on the projects together, and also to check up on him, because that's just what he does. And I like that they're doing this a lot more often. So far, after 32 issues of getting faked out about Norman getting turned into the Green Goblin, I kind of like the fact that Norman is genuinely just a good guy. He feels bad over the fact that he, offed Gwen Stacy, and Peter in his character, he genuinely wants to help Norman out, keeping him in check, and in this process they establish some sort of like father-son relationship, and Peter does bring that up in this conversation here, before things go to chaos. The lights shut off. They both run to change into their suits. Of course, Norman being at the lab, he's basically right there. Peter just has to, put a spandex on the spot. But we follow Norman's perspective a little bit. As he runs over to the room where his suit is at, and walks in, he sees that there's a whole candlelit sort of ritual set up that Kraven installed. And the Goblin suit looks like it's a part of the ritual, it's just disassembled there. Before Spider-Man can interact, they do end up closing the door and sealing it. Kraven and Norman are just left there alone. This is another segment in the comic that I liked. It sort of feels first like, oh, Norman gave up easily, he's about to take getting impaled by Kraven. But no, he actually puts up a fight. He's not just gonna sit there and take it. But inevitably, Kraven does overpower Norman, and he gets to a position where he's really just about to impale Norman with a spear, when an explosion happens from the side of the room, and it creates a giant hole where Spider-Man jumps through. And I like this part too, because they were talking about like this laser that they were working on, and they were thinking of powering it up. But in this case, Spider-Man used it to blow a hole through the wall to just get to Norman and save him. I like that neat touch. It's a lot more effort than we got with like the Dark Web arc. Holy crap. But I'm just gonna stop bringing that up. I like this. Now the room filled with smoke, Spider-Man can't see what's going on, but he uses his Spidey sense to actually figure out where he needs to go. Because in this case, he has to go towards the danger, and that's how he's getting to Kraven, not being able to see through all the smoke. Right before Norman gets impaled by Kraven, Spider-Man jumps in the way, and he gets impaled instead. Kraven, seeing what he's done, sees this, and he kind of feels like he regrets accidentally impaling Spider-Man with it. Kraven's own instincts tell him to run. He's no longer the hunter. He knows that this creature that he just created is going to be after him. Effectively, the final page is Spider-Man just laughing maniacally, and we're left on a to be continued. And then at the very end of the comic itself, there is a one-page teaser on who are the gods. I don't particularly know much about that because I'm pretty sure that's just a brand new thing that's gonna come out, and this is just to pique some interest. Personally, I'm interested myself. Besides that, for the overall comic book itself, it was not bad. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was really good. The whole thing with Peter's relationships, that kind of gets old. It is weird seeing how Norman is getting attacked again for the second time, even though they do establish how he set up like a countermeasure from last time when Dr. Octopus invaded. But it looked like it was nothing because Kraven just shows up and gets through his security system quite easily. It did make me think, like, why didn't Kraven just team up with Dr. Octopus in that case? Since they were both going after Norman Osborn, and literally their goal was the same exact thing, which was turning Norman into the Green Goblin. Was Kraven just busy getting laid, unlike Dr. Octopus, as established in the previous issue? Perhaps. Overall, like I said, I did enjoy the comic. But what do you guys think? Make sure to like and subscribe, and if you enjoyed listening to me talk about the Amazing Spider-Man comics, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.